Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to my channel. My name is Paul, the Canadian Snowman, here once again with another Geography Now video. We're on to Syria. If anyone's new to my channel, I've done every country in the world, alphabetical order, up until this point. So if there's another country you wanted to check out, definitely check out my Geography Now playlist. And I will continue to do all these videos as they're released until I've done every country in the world. Who knows how long that'll take? This one was released a week ago. But yeah, and plus, if you're new to my channel, I do a lot of like war series and just different kind of like war and history kind of videos. You'd have to check out the videos, but a lot of different cool stuff. So definitely check that stuff out. And yeah, what do I know about Syria? I just know, like, I guess the conflicts that I hear on the news. I mean, I'm really not a big news person, but I definitely heard Syria in the news. I kind of try and stay away from I don't know, a lot of mainstream media kind of stuff. Uh, but not really. I guess no, I don't. I guess don't have the best outlook on Syria, and I think a lot of it. But then again, there's been a bunch of countries in this where I didn't have the best, you know, I guess opinion off the bat. It just because I guess the media or whatnot portrays, a lot of countries in a bad light, uh, in this kind of thing, and it's usually like the people of those countries, 99 basically all the time are usually like good people usually, and it's just like conflict with governments or whatnot. So I don't know. I'm definitely looking forward to getting more of an insight and learning a lot more about this country. So let's check out Syria and see what Syria has to offer. All right. Before you please hit that like and subscribe button, bud. I really appreciate it. And jump into this 31-minute video. We got a long one here, guys. 3, 2, 1, bam.
All right, we are back to the Levant, or Bilad al-Sham. In the Arab world family, Syria is kind of like the old man reading a book, but then he lifts his sleeves, revealing scars and tattoos that tell stories of every chapter of his life. He's a complicated man with a story way too difficult to summarize. But for what it's worth, I'll try to get as much palpable information shoved into whatever amount of time we have. Right. I'll do my best and take my job seriously. It's time to learn geography now! Hey everybody, I'm your host Barbs. Get a Geography Now mug or Geography Now merch at geographynow.com. It's not selling out if it's your brand. So I actually did entertain the thought of possibly visiting Syria for this episode. So I asked you guys, the Syrian geography peeps, if there was any way I could. More or less, most of you kind of responded like this.
We would love it if you could come, and things are getting better, but now may not be the best time.
Even if I fly into Lebanon and maybe take a bus across...
No. We love that you really want to come, but we would totally get it if, you wanted to sit this one out.
So I took your advice and decided to hold off on a Syria trip. Nonetheless, you know what that means. If I can't go, then I have to bring Syria here. Any of you guys, the Syrian geography peeps, will be featured in this video. You guys submitted your own videos. Super excited for you guys to meet them. It's going to be awesome. Quite a lot of stuff going on. Let's begin. So before we dive into the map, you have to understand some backstory when it comes to Syria. See, the shape and borders that you see here right now are technically what Syria looks like today. However, these borders were only shaped in the 20th century. Prior to that, the areas that Syria has today were subject to a myriad of empires, kingdoms, sultanates, protectorates, and state statuses. It would take way too long to cover, but throughout thousands of years, Syria went through the Neolithic period, the Ebla Kingdom, Mesopotamia years, Old Assyrian empires, then the Hittites, Canaanites, Phoenicians, Neo-Assyrians, and Neo-Babylonians, Achaemenids, Persians, Greeks, even the Armenians got in for a little bit, then the Romans, the Byzantines, the Arab Rashiduns conquered, bringing in Islam, the Umayyads, Abbasids, Mongols even took a quick stab at it for some reason, then the Ottoman Turks took over for like 400 years, and the French were the last ones to hold on to it until they got independence in the 40s, but then they joined Egypt as one super Arab nation, but then they were like, not feeling it, peace out Egypt, but we're keeping the flag. Then the Al-Assad family takes over the country since 1971, and here we are today with the current state we have. And that's not even scratching the surface. First, let's take a look at the globe, shallst we?
First of all, Syria lies in the Middle East, bordered by 5 other countries. This general area east of the Mediterranean that Syria lies in is historically known as the Levant, making Syria a Levantine country. Syria's boundaries today are essentially the byproduct of post-Ottoman era delineation lines created by the Sykes-Picot Agreement of 1916, allocating the boundaries.
I just finished like a Or I'm not. More videos might be released, but a big. I think it's just like at least 25 episodes of the Ottoman Empire. So yeah, if that interests you, definitely check that out. Really good stuff.
Delineation lines created by the Sykes-Picot Agreement of 1916, allocating the boundaries of modern-day Syria to France, the last country to hold the area under mandate status. Since independence, the northern and southern borders have had some conflict in regards to territorial disputes. In the north of Syria, along with the border of Turkey, these areas are sometimes called Western Kurdistan or Rojava, and they are heavily administered by the Kurdish community that has some level of self-proclaimed autonomy from the rest of Syria. Otherwise, at the tri-point with Lebanon and Israel, they have the Golan Heights dispute. This entire valley has been in conflict since 1964, as there are no formal treaties or documents describing the exact boundary, and both sides claim it. Today, Israel occupies most of the Golan Heights and up to the UN Disengagement Observer Force, or UNDOF, Alpha Line, and from there, the UN's patrolling force stands guard in the buffer zone all the way up to the UNDOF Line Bravo. Within this buffer zone, Syria occupies small towns and even the peak of Mount Hermon, the tallest mountain in the region. There's a lot more that goes into this, but that's the general layout. The capital city is Damascus, known as the city of...
Yeah, very controversial there, right? Very controversial stuff there. Yeah, with Israel. Anyway.
Jasmine, widely considered the oldest continuously inhabited city on Earth. Here, of course, you can also find the largest and busiest airport, Damascus International. Nonetheless, the largest city is actually Aleppo, a little bit further up north, followed by Homs at number 3, just between them and Damascus. The largest shipping port of the country, though, is actually the port of Latakia, which has been in continuous use since 2000 BC. Speaking of coasts, Syria only has about 5 main small islands in the Mediterranean, the largest being Arwad, just off the coast of Tartus, known for its ancient citadel. The country is divided into 14 governorates. However, the governorate of Quneitra, pretty sure I mispronounced that, sorry, is essentially the disputed Golan Heights area. All the administration is located east of the DOF Bravo line, but some of the towns are located within the buffer zone, some literally on the Alpha buffer line. Finally, the majority of the population lives in an upside-down crescent shape that hugs the borders with Lebanon and Turkey and flows down the Euphrates River. This means that most of the population can be reached via the 2 main highways, the M5 and M4. Syria also has an extensive rail network, both cargo and passenger, that more or less falls within the same pattern of population distribution as well.
Now keep in mind, as of upload for this video in 2021, due to recent ongoing conflicts, many of the rail lines have either halted or changed operation schedules, and of course, based on whatever the social climate is of that day, driving between cities, you may or may not have to pass through security checkpoints. The rules are always kind of changing, and there doesn't seem to be a set system in place. In addition, Syria is incredibly rich with distinct ancient sites, unlike anywhere on Earth, let alone 6 UNESCO heritage sites. It's kind of unfortunate though, because the aftermath of current conflicts have decreased tourism somewhere around 75%.
Wow.
Nonetheless, the country is still moving forward.
I was gonna say, like, you probably get a lot of like tourism dollars there if since they say there's a bunch of great sites to go see, but like they've told him, I guess it's just not a good time to go right now. I'm sure we'll probably learn a lot more about those sites and why not to go there right now. I'm sure coming up.
To some degree, and if you are lucky enough to find yourself in Syria on a good day, you should consider checking out some of the top notable places. Let's give it to one of you guys, the Syrian geography peeps, to explain. This time, I believe it is Gaida, the guide. She's literally a tour guide in Syria.
Wow.
This is Gaida. I'm a tour guide in Syria. Let's start with my city, Damascus, the Umayyad Mosque. It's one of the oldest places dedicated for worship. Next would be definitely Palmyra, the beautiful oasis in the Syrian desert. With its beautiful monuments, people worship 61 different gods there, and they all live peacefully and in harmony. Now that's remarkable. Busra is also a special place to my heart. It's breathtaking. Also, one of my favorite places to
Hold on a
visit is
second. That's amazing. Like, that is like all intact and everything. I'd imagine that you guys, I'd hope so, that you guys can still kind of do like, I don't know what, like plays or I don't know, some kind of, I don't know what, the theater, right? So I hope something goes on there and it's just not kept empty. Maybe right now, with stuff going on, it is, but this seems like a great place, for gatherings and stuff. I don't know, really cool stuff. It just reminds me of like Rome, but this one's actually intact. Cool stuff.
place to my heart. It's breathtaking. Also, one of my favorite places to visit is Malula. It's literally carved into the mountains. Amrit, the Phoenician city with the
Some of this stuff that looks very familiar. Have I seen this in a different video? I just not remembering. Maybe someone who's watched my videos a lot you can let me know. But like, I'm sorry, I'm pausing it, guys. But this looks familiar right here. It definitely looks familiar.
It's literally carved into the mountains. Amrit, the Phoenician city with the oldest Olympic stadium in the world. Also, Crac de Chevalier, the village of Saidnaya, the coastal area, and of course, Aleppo and Hama. What I want to
Wow.
conclude with is that Syria is an underrated country, and I can guarantee you'll learn a lot and enjoy every minute of it. Thank you, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Right. Well, yeah, it's definitely underrated. I mean, look at like the tourism. Like, if you get some good infrastructure, things get back to normal. I guess without, you know, getting more safe. I guess. Um, Seems like with tourism dollars, that place would thrive. But I'm sure it'll get there.
Gaida. Check out her Instagram and hit her up if you ever want to go to Syria. Yeah, it's quite impressive how much Syria holds a link to the past and tries its best to maintain it. And one other thing that gives them structure is the land they live upon. Which brings us to...
It's not magic that delivers the
Starbucks
holidays to
commercials.
you. It's the United States Postal Service.
Alexa, play our favorite song.
Mom.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so when most people think of Syria and what it looks like, they tend to just kind of default to what they've seen in the news, you know, conflict in dry, dusty deserts, beige and yellow stones. Yeah, that perspective needs an upgrade. Let's check it out on the globe one more time. Motion graphic, go!
Syria lies right on the northwestern edge of the Arabian Plate, split on the Dead Sea fault line. This is basically what causes the entire mountainous western region of Syria. In the north, you have the Bargilus or Nusairiyah Mountains, which is, of course, as you can see, the most fertile, green, and lush part of the country. To the south, you have the anti-Lebanon Mountains, where, as we already explained, you can find the highest peak, Mount Hermon. Inland from the fault line, you have the Palmyra Fold Belt, a byproduct of the Dead Sea fault line, which creates two small hill chains, the Rujmain and Ruwaq ranges. They fade downwards into the vast, sparsely inhabited Syrian desert. To the very south, you find the As-Safa and Jabal ad-Druz volcanic fields. The land is made up of dark basaltic lava fields with about 40 mostly Holocene or extinct cinder cones. The longest river of the country is, of course, the mighty Euphrates River that originates in Turkey, fed by two other major rivers flowing southward, the Balikh and Khabur. Within the flow path of the Euphrates, you find the largest inland body of water, Lake Assad, which is actually a reservoir created by the Tapka Dam in the south side. These waterways are essentially the lifeblood of the entire eastern side of the country and have been for civilizations for millennia. Finally, Syria is made up of four distinct ecoregions. You have the eastern Mediterranean broadleaf forest zone, which is concentrated mostly on the coastal mountains by the sea. Then you have the xeric grass and shrublands in the middle inland section of the country. Just south of that, you have the Mesopotamian shrub desert, the driest and most sparsely populated part of the country. And finally, in very small sections, you can actually find southern Anatolian deciduous forest zones, locked in sections of the western mountain ranges. The trees here actually look different from the Mediterranean broadleaf zone, so yeah.
Wow.
So, as you can see from that motion graphic, there's quite a bit going on with Syria's natural side. Volcanoes, who would have thought? In any case, with much land to work
Well, yeah, it definitely makes sense of where the population is. Of course, everyone wants to be around the green, so anytime they show this is the population, well, obviously that's got to be like a desert or something, right? It's not really livable. I'm sure. Maybe you guys let me know. I'm sure some people do live out there. It's just probably very, very scarce. I hope you can live out there.
there's quite a bit going on with Syria's natural side. Volcanoes, who would have thought? In any case, with much land to work with, Syria is also a place known for its industry and fiscal output. That means it's time for my triple shot of espresso break, which means Noah!
On scene and ready. Let's roll. Now, economically speaking, in addition to the effects of conflict, sanctions against Assad's government from numerous nations and IGOs like the Arab League, the EU, and the US played into their collapse. Most major enterprises in Syria are nationalized, but in 2001, private banking was made legal, and in 2004, they formed their own small domestic market. So in a way, they are kind of attempting to switch things up and experiment with new finance methods, which are slowly kind of working. One thing that helps, of course, thanks to their diverse landscape, is a relatively abundant resource reservoir. Now, most outsiders might assume Syria is a major petroleum producer, and although they do have a hydrocarbon belt, mostly in the deserts in northeast, and it does account for about a quarter of their state's revenue and has been their major export since 1974, nonetheless, on a global scale, they aren't really a major powerhouse producer in terms of volume, not even in the top 50.
But you'll know we are still keeping our eyes on them.
Of course you are. Syrians actually export more olive oil than crude oil. It is their prized resource, and they don't just use it for food. One thing you will definitely hear every Syrian praising Aleppo soap made with olive oil. This stuff dates back thousands of years and the technique is still used today.
You guys have sent me this stuff on Fan Friday. I love it. It usually comes in boxes that look like this. Soap looks like this. It has a very raw, earthy smell, and when you use it, it feels like you just took a shower with history. Buy it.
Fun fact, Damascus was also known for producing some of the most prized steel in antiquity with a special technique that is...
That looked pretty cool, though. I was like, it doesn't really look like soap, but I mean, I guess I'm used to, never mind. It looked pretty cool, though. It looks like you're be like, so you're washing yourself with some like ancient fossil or something. I don't know.
Damascus was also known for producing some of the most prized steel in antiquity with a special technique that is all but lost today. Many have tried to replicate it, but none have had much success. Well, there's more than just resources in this country. Believe it or not, there's even flora and fauna to discuss. And who better to discuss it than Gary Harlow?
Right, Gary Harlow here. Syria's ecosystem is pretty much divided east and west. Currently, the country has 2 nature reserves, 2 state forests, and over 30 protected areas. Within these reserves, you might find some of the most distinct species you've ever heard of. Mountain gazelles, Angora goats, the steppe eagle, and on the coast, you can find the angel shark and the Mediterranean monk seals. The Levant viper and black desert cobras call their rocky hills their homes. They pay rent there and everything, as does the deathstalker scorpion, one of the most dangerous species of scorpion in the world. I've eaten 3 of them. The national animal is actually the rare and endangered Syrian brown bear, whereas the national bird is the northern bald ibis. In fact, due to recent conflict...
I don't know. I never really thought about bears when you go to Syria. That's kind of cool that you guys got bears over there, though.
Whereas the national bird is the northern bald ibis. In fact, due to recent conflicts, many of the wildlife have suffered and had either permanently migrated to other less affected areas or been dramatically reduced. And one of which being the now extinct Syrian elephant. Syria used to have elephants. One animal they definitely have not reduced though would be the famous fat-tailed sheep. It's said that top-notch baklava is made from the fat of the tail of these sheep.
Speaking of interesting parts of animals, remember that time we ate camel hump in Somaliland?
And that's all for me. Whoever wears this hat is Gary Harlow. Now Paul is Gary Harlow.
Thank you, Gary. Yes, Syria definitely knows how to do food. They aren't called the Fertile Crescent for nothing. To expound a little bit more on the food of Syria, we have these 2 geography peeps to explain.
Marhaba, my name is Angham. I come from a small town called Banyas in Syria. And today we're gonna go over some of the top foods in Syria. The Syrian cuisine is a part of the Eastern Mediterranean cuisine. Makdous is a usually breakfast food. It's a cured eggplant stuffed with red peppers, walnuts, and dipped in olive oil. We have also ورق عنب, محاشي مقلوبة, كوسة بلبن, شيخ المحشي, more common in Damascus, cherry kebab, which is so popular among the Armenian population in Aleppo, sweets, حلاوة بجبن, هريسة, معروكة.
A popular snack or comfort food that we have is eating rice with yogurt. So I have like my cooked rice here, some fresh yogurt, and then I put a bit of allspice or 7 spices. This is a very popular seasoning that we use. So this is what it looks like. You basically just eat rice and yogurt as a snack. At least that's what Syrians do, and it's phenomenal. It's literally like my comfort food.
Thanks, Geography Peeps. Well, that's all I got in this segment. Cheers to you all, and Barbs, back to you.
Thank you, Noah. Also, yes, Syrians are obsessed with yerba mate. They are one of the top importers from South American countries, especially Argentina. Fun fact, if it's cold, it's called terere. Watch the Paraguay episode. Also, they are one of the top producers of arak, their centuries-old tradition aniseed liquor. Invented by Arab Muslims in the 12th century.
Isn't that like haram?
Yeah, it technically is. I'll leave that up to you guys that are more knowledgeable in Islamic doctrine. Anyway, that brings us to the actual people of Syria. The Syrians.
Oh man, that stuff looks really interesting. I wonder if I'll get like I do Universal Yum, and we send you snacks from different countries. I wonder if I'll get one from Syria because that stuff looks interesting. I don't think they're going to send me liquor though.
Knowledgeable in Islamic doctrine. Anyway, that brings us to the actual people of Syria. The Syrians. So let's discuss them in the next part.
Demographics.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds, owner of Mint Mobile. With a holiday offer, I think that you're gonna like. When you switch to Mint...
What are you doing?
So, I asked you guys what it means to be Syrian. Here are some things you guys, the Syrian geography peeps, said.
As Syrian, I feel very proud to be part of the historical cycle of the earth. I feel very sad and upset when the word of Syria been mentioned only for war subjects. Actually, Syrian history is very massive.
All Syrians again look different, and this can change depending on what region of Syria you're from. So that's something that I also find really interesting. A lot of people think I'm French just because of the way I look, my complexion, my blue eyes, my curly brown hair. Again, Syria is one of the oldest civilizations, and it still preserves that culture regardless of that European, descent or change.
I'm very proud being a Syrian citizen because Syria is the cradle of civilization, the Fertile Crescent, The oldest civilizations in the world, in the recorded history, have thrived on the Syrian soil. Syria has also helped other nations. For example, in 2006, the Lebanese refugee crisis. We also hosted the Iraqi refugees. So Syria is I would say she's the carrion mother of the Arab world.
If you ever decided to visit, you'll end up meeting the most genuine and hospitable people, and you'll be having an amazing experience.
Thank you. Syria is a complex country of peoples. They are shaped by all eras of civilization that have passed through for the past...
See, already, it just seems like a cool, like a nice, friendly place to visit, So it's already once you get past, the conflict that they only show on the news, it definitely seems like there's a lot of heart there.
10 or so millennia. But first, let's break it down. Motion graphic time.
First of all, the country has about 18.5 million people. However, pre-war, their population was around 23 million. About 10 million have been internally displaced, and over 5 million have fled since 2011. The country is made up primarily of Syrian Arabs, or Levantine Arabs, at about 74%. The second largest group are Kurds at about 9 to 10%. From here, things get a little confusing. It's often said that Turkmen Syrians are the third largest group, but there aren't any real reliable estimates on their exact numbers. In any case, after that, about 4% of the population are Assyrian, 1.5% Circassian, 1% Armenian, and the rest are a slew of various other minority groups like Albanians, Georgians, Greeks, Persians, Pashtuns, Russians, and Bosnians.
I'm not even gonna lie. Maybe there's a video out there one day we do when it comes to, I've said this in different videos, when it comes to the demographics and me knowing exactly what the differences are between, a lot of these, I don't really know, I can recognize more names more than others, but as far as culture or whatnot, I'm not really sure the differences. So I apologize about that. This is always the thing that messes me up in these videos, is because I'm not really sure,
Like Albanians, Georgians, Greeks, Persians, Pashtuns, Russians, and Bosnians.
They use the Syrian pound as their currency, they use the type C, E, and L plug outlets, and they drive on the right side of the road. Now back to the identity thing. What exactly is the term Levantine or Levantine Arab? This was actually a question that I asked a lot of you guys, the Syrian geography peeps, and more or less this is the answers that you guys kind of gave me. It's not very easy to explain, but in the most condensed way to put it, it's not originally Arab. Of course, over the centuries, numerous empires and communities came in and intermixed, so most of the population will probably have a genetic admixture paralleling these groups. But what it boils down to is that Levantines are more of an indigenous Mediterranean people group, and some will say that their lineage goes as far back to the ancient Canaanites. In any case, besides that, Syria's population is kind of broken down into two categories, ethnic and religious. And you know what, I've actually been talking a long time. Let's have someone else fill in. Ian, here, why don't you have a segment? The people actually kind of like you. So, here we go.
Now, we don't have time to get into deep detail for each group. There are so many, but some to highlight were already mentioned in the graph. You have the largest group, the Kurds, sometimes called Rojava Kurds. They mostly live in the north part of the country.
I made a video on it. If you want to check it out, we explained the Kurds.
The Turkmen Syrians date back to the Seljuk Empire, a Turco-Persian empire, and many more.
Oh, they're actually explaining it. I didn't expect this, so this is awesome.
The Turkmen Syrians date back to the Seljuk Empire, a Turco-Persian empire, and many more came during Ottoman times as well. The Armenians have a long history of inhabiting Syria. The largest migration came during the Ottoman times when there was a lot of conflict that drove them out. You have the Cypriot-originated Greeks, mostly found in the coastal areas, nice, some of whom are actually Muslim, which is pretty rare for Greeks. Don't get an Arab Syrian confused with an Assyrian. They have their own language, their own alphabet, their own flag. Most of them straddle lands across Syria and Iraq and are predominantly Christian.
Thank you, Wayne. Good job.
Ow.
For the religion part, of course, Sunni Islam and Sunni-based schools of teaching are the predominant faith, whereas another 10 or so percent are mostly Shia and Shia-based sects like Alawis or Nusayris. Most of them are concentrated on the Mediterranean coast, and interestingly enough, it is the sect of the ruling Assad family that they are tied with. Another 10% is mostly Christian and Christian-based sects like Maronites, Arameans, Orthodox, Apostolic. They even have the oldest church in the world. From there, about 3% are Druze, most of whom have large communities in the south of the country, and the rest are a group of other non-related faith communities like Romani, Mandeans, Yarsanis, and Yazidis. Some like Romani are North Indian based, and some like Yazidi are Iranic Zoroastrian based. Historically, there even used to be a large Sephardic Jewish community. They actually migrated after the expulsion from Spain in the 15th century. Basically, Syria allows religious freedom. However, by constitutional law, the president must always be Muslim. So anyway, language-wise, Arabic is the official language.
No, you don't say.
Yep. It is, but of course they speak with a Levantine accent. Here are some of you guys explaining the Levantine accent. Go for it.
It's called the Levantine Arabic or Shami Arabic. We do not pronounce the letters th, the, and qa. For example, the word qamar means moon. We pronounce it as Amar. We're talking about a country that is smaller than Colorado in area, and still I can count 25 or even more local dialects. So it's really not enough to talk about them in a short video, but I hope this helps.
In Syrian accent, it's very tough. Like for example, the it's like very light. In Egyptian way, sham, but in Syrian one, al-sham. It's very tough, very strong.
And so in Levantine Arabic, there's a lot of French-esque words. With eggplant, we say aubergine. In Levantine Arabic, we say saboun. And in French, it's savon.
Thank you. Throughout the country, though, you'll find small communal language isolates, mostly Semitic-based. For example, the town of Malula, they still speak Aramaic, the language that was spoken by Jesus. Moving on, though, of course, as we mentioned, Syria's history has never been short of complicated, which brings us to the current situation of the civil war and crisis. Now, although this isn't even a sliver in the grand picture of Syria, we still, of course, have to cover it in this episode because it's kind of a big deal. We're not going to sidestep it. Depending on who you talk to, Syrians both in and out of Syria will have a lot to say about the current state of affairs of their home country. I asked you guys, the Syrian geography peeps, to kind of explain a little bit, and more or less you all kind of came to these conclusions. What it boils down to is pretty much everybody on all sides wishes things could be better. They just all have different opinions on how to get to that better. There's no simple way to summarize it, but many might say that it all starts with two main factors: the proposition for construction of an oil pipeline from Qatar to Europe through Syria, and the Arab Spring uprisings that took place in 2011. Basically, both sides claim the other side was the instigator. Those that are against Assad will say,
Assad and his family have been ruling as dictators since 1971, and he responded violently, hurting protesters, and then he did it again.
And yet those that support Assad will probably say something like,
yeah, well, Western powers infiltrated in the Arab Spring, supplied protesters with weapons.
And there's a lot more factored into this, but in the end, everything got super messy. Some soldiers defected and created a new rebel army, and then ISIS and Al-Qaeda got involved. All while this was happening, the Kurds were like,
yeah, we figured something like this might happen, and we are not letting them touch our communities. Time to secede.
Then it gets even more complicated considering that Iran and Russia supported the Assad regime, whereas the GCC states and the US supported the rebels, effectively making a proxy war. Essentially, since 2016, this whole crisis and civil war led to the largest refugee population in the world since the Rwandan genocide. Now, there are so many layers that go into this, but everyone can agree that it has put Syria through a lot of strain, and everyone is understandably sick and tired of it. But one thing Syrians don't get tired of is sports. No way to tactfully transition, so may as well just do a sharp pounce. Now,
I do appreciate them going because I didn't really understand, exactly kind of what the deal was. So it was kind of nice for him to, get the throw it out there to where I understand now. Well, I guess I'll never understand because that was just, like I said, a sliver of it. But I kind of get the idea now. Anyways.
Usually Art fills in for this segment, but he is currently spending time with his family for the holidays. So let's bring in Gabs to fill in for the segment. Remember we went to Finland? That was awesome.
That was the best time of my life. I haven't done anything fun since then. Syrians and sports, yes. For any major sporting event in Syria, there is no better place than the Abbasian Stadium in Damascus. It is the home of their national soccer or football team, as well as staging area for the couple of Pan-Arab games. Latakia also hosted the 10 Mediterranean Games. Like most countries, soccer or football is their favorite sport. These two guys probably being their most world-renowned players. Their national football team has qualified for 4 Asian Cup competitions. Otherwise, they show interest.
Are you guys going to the World Cup? Because I know Canada is right at this moment is still trying to get into the World Cup. I'm just kind of curious. You guys doing all all those qualifying games and stuff, trying to get in the World Cup yourselves?
In other forms of athletics.
No, really?
Yeah, they do. I swear. Yeah. In the Olympics, they have 2 bronze medals in boxing and weightlifting, 1 silver in wrestling, and 1 gold medal in the Summer Olympics. Their only gold medalist today being Gadashua. Syria was so proud as she finished the women's heptathlon in 1996. Finally, at the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, which took place in 2021 due to the pandemic, obviously, Hensaza, at age 11, became the youngest Olympian in more than 50 years competing in table tennis. Wow. Hopefully some of their athletes will get endorsed and have their faces on cereal boxes.
Oh! Thank you, Gabs. In any case, Syria's culture extends beyond athletics. The first alphabet was created and discovered here. Weddings can be crazy. Some groups have a ketbet, and it's usually followed by an arkada, and they prick the groom with pins, and women step on the toes of the bride, followed by a sword fighting banquet. Each group has something special and unique. To talk a little bit more about the backstory of their culture, here's Random Hannah with culture stuff.
Keenan.
Hey, Keenan.
Alrighty then.
Good.
Feeling good.
Interesting.
I just found all these cars on Auto Trader.
Hey everyone, I'm back. Did you miss me? Well, you can always have me on a Random Hannah shirt at geographynow.com. So Syrian culture wildly parallels that of other Levantine nations in that you'll find a more Mediterranean vibe rather than an Arab one. And everywhere in Syria, you'll probably encounter the traditional Bahra house with a fountain in the middle courtyard. Occasionally, you might spot men wearing a shirwa or a tarbush and women with traditional kaftan worn at special events. Speaking of which, Syria is famous for their silk called damask, or Damascus brocade fabric. Syrians are well known in the arts and craft world as well. You can find intricately patterned wooden...
I feel like for some reason I knew that Damascus. I think it has to be like, I love like medieval kind of shows, and with silks, not with silks, but you know, someone had to have talked about a dress or something on those shows, because that name, I've heard that before. I don't know. Never mind.
Syrians are well known in the arts and craft world as well. You can find intricately patterned wooden mosaic woodcraft in every marketplace. And it's believed that glass blowing was invented in Syria as a way to produce jars and vases faster than traditional clay methods. Syrians have a long-standing tradition of holding prominent figures in the literature and arts department in the Arab world. These guys were key players in the Nadha, or Arab literature and cultural revival of the 19th century. In addition, Syria is home to a multitude of contemporary artists. This guy, Ali Ferzat, was once the head of the Arab Cartoonists Association. Now, all forms of media are state-controlled, and since the Civil War, many artists have been incarcerated. Nonetheless, despite all that, Syria still seems to be right up there with Egypt in terms of popularity in the Arab world with
So that's the same thing. I know this is controversial. I'm sorry. You have to watch what you say, you know, or else you can get in big trouble. Like posting like a YouTube video, or like you can't, or you in that country you can't really do that because it's being monitored. Like for those who put videos for this, you know, where you got the videos from those Syrians, like if they would have said something like I guess politically, you know, or I guess wrong or something like that, could they really gotten in trouble? Like, I'm just trying to see how serious it is, you know. How much you gotta watch what you say, maybe, with, you know, the conflicts going on. I'm just kind of curious. Maybe it's not a big deal at all, and you can say whatever you want on here. I don't know.
TV shows and dramas. If you'd like to find out more, check out Filmography Now!
Hannah has a spin-off.
Finally, there are so many festivals celebrated here, and each people group has their own you can find regionally. They have 2 festivals dedicated to flowers in Latakia and Damascus, a cotton festival, song festival, and a jasmine festival. Certain groups, like the Kurds and Turkmens, celebrate Nowruz. The Assyrians have their own Assyrian New Year. Yazidis might have the Shanjak Parade, and so on. And unfortunately, you know the deal. This is the part where I usually say something like, you can't have a festival without music, and then I scoff as keys, music intro. Ugh. Join Team Hannah.
You can buy my shirt at geographynow.com. Anyway, music in Syria. Music here goes way back, like super ancient. It's actually said that the first musical notes in the world was actually discovered on ancient clay tablets. It was even played and recorded by Assyrian pianist Malik Jandali. Sorry for the wrong pronunciation. Otherwise, specifically Kudud Halubia and Muwasha in the city of Aleppo. They are music and poetry styles uniquely developed in Syria. And of course, you can't talk about music without mentioning 2 native instruments, the kanun and ney. The kanun being a trapezoid-shaped zither, and the ney being a narrow wooden flute that has been used for nearly over 5,000 years. Syria is also home to a ton of different styles of traditional dances, the most notable probably being dabke and the al-Sama dance, which is more often performed by Sufi Muslims. Otherwise, in a contemporary sense, Syria has lifted up so many notable singers and artists. Here are a few that you guys have mentioned. If I could send them all out a Keith shirt, I probably would. Everyone says this guy is Sabah Fakhri. He's kind of like the Pavarotti of the Arab world. And finally, like we've discussed in the Saudi Arabia episode, there is a sort of underground metal scene culture thing that goes on in Syria. And it's hard for them to perform due to government restrictions. Many Syrian metalheads will probably cite Jack Power as the leading artist that pioneered metal into the country, with his metal covers combining metal with traditional Arab instruments. All right, that's it for me, guys. I'm out. Woo. Don't buy Hannah's shirt. Stay Keith, everybody.
Woo! Thank you, Keith. Well, so we've covered quite a bit. The land of a million stories. And part of that complex story involves outside countries that have played a role in their history. Let's discuss Syria's global interaction in... Now, despite all the recent well-known drama, Syria still has their way of dealing with the outside. You don't live in the cradle of civilization without being able to know a thing or two when it comes to international affairs and diplomacy. You have to understand, when you ask which countries Syria is close to, it really depends on who you ask. And often you'll notice that there's a huge difference between what the government claims versus what the average everyday citizen claims, and which group within the citizens you're asking. But here's the motion graphic.
As an Arab nation, of course, they used to be a member of the Arab League, but had their status suspended since 2011 when the Civil War broke out. Nonetheless, Syrians still have their buddies, Arab or not. For one, South America has had its eye on Syria for a while, specifically Brazil and Venezuela. Brazil was the first country in the Americas to give humanitarian visas to Syrian refugees seeking asylum during war times. Brazil actually has the highest number of Syrians in diaspora at about 4 million, if you include multi-generational families and those of partial descent. In addition, Venezuela not only has politically aligned with Syria's government for a long time, but also has many in diaspora as well. Even their former Vice President Tarek El-Aissami is of Lebanese Syrian descent. Now, a little closer to home, if you ask the Syrian government, they will probably state that Russia and Iran are their closest and in some cases most strategic allies. This was very evident when they sided with Iran against Iraq in the Iran-Iraq War, as they shared a common animosity against Saddam Hussein. In addition, Syria has been friends with Russia for a long time, and especially during the Assad rulership. Russia has naval ports leased out in Tartus and has been a key figure in supporting Assad's government in the Syrian civil war. Syria even offers Russians war tours. If you ask the people, though, you might get a few other answers depending on who.
What are war tours? What is that? Anyways.
Russians war tours. If you ask the people, though, you might get a few other answers depending on who you ask. Many Syrians might say Algeria is a close friend. In fact, after Algeria gained independence from France, many Syrians came in to help reteach Algerians Arabic, as it was banned from the country for over 100 years. In addition, Algeria often acts as the go-to mediator for any conflicts. Since the refugee crisis, though, Turkey has taken in the most refugees at over 3.5 million as of 2021, costing them over $8 billion in aid. Although the process hasn't hasn't been perfectly smooth, as it has put a stress on the nation to some degree. Nonetheless, Turkey has stepped up the most in regards to the crisis. When I asked you guys, the Syrian geograpeeps, who you thought the best friends of Syria were though, no shocker, most of you ended up saying your fellow neighbors in the Levant, Lebanon, Jordan, and Palestinians. Some of you even included Iraq. The Levant countries overall get each other the best. They've shared the longest histories, their dialects are very similar, and their cultures are incredibly intertwined. Lebanon actually hosts the second largest Syrian refugee population at about 1.1 million, which is about 1/5 of their entire population. Jordan once did try to take over Syria in the 20s, but otherwise they've been really cool with each other. Jordan also usually acts as the conduit between Syrians and Palestinians when they want to either do business or just see each other, as Israel's borders have been closed off since the conflict. And Iraq and Syria have always been the two powerhouse cradles of civilization countries. Overall, when you put these countries all together, they can't help but deny that they are incredibly close and they'll always be there for each other.
In conclusion, with Syria, you get something kind of like the Aleppo soap. You get a country that's been around for a long time and it's still going on in the 21st century, and it's still precious and valued amongst its people just the way it is. And maybe, just maybe, the outside world should see it that way too. All right, that's it with all the S countries. Stay tuned. The first T country, Tajikistan, is coming up next.
I want one of those soaps just as a souvenir. That looks cool. But anyways, kind of what I kind of expected going into it. Like you know, the Civil War is the one that obviously gets all the attention and everything. But you know, under all that, when you look beneath the surface, you know, it seems like really good people. You know, who just want, you know, their whole country to get along so they can like thrive and move forward and just get past that. But obviously, you know, I get the bigger voices are the ones, you know, I don't know, thriving for power and want things their way. And, you know, hopefully all that kind of gets taken care of, I guess, sooner rather than later. And I guess, you know, with like the friend zone and stuff like that, that doesn't, another thing that doesn't surprise me. I've done a lot of these videos, and definitely the government's, you know, point of view of who the friends are, you know, and the people's point of view, you know, the government, obviously they're after what it's going to make, you know, countries are going to make more money for them. And then, you know, the people is more like what people are friendliest and all that kind of stuff. Definitely a lot of cool sites. You know, definitely in the best interest of the country for sure, you know, get everything settled and get tourism going again. And I don't know. I don't know how, like I said, I didn't go in much of the conflict stuff. So I'm hoping things are going in a better direction right now. Crossing my fingers for you guys. But anyway, the people definitely look like amazing people and some cool people that'd be nice to sit down and have a drink with or whatnot. But anyways, guys, let me know your thoughts below in the comments or anything else. If you're from Syria, I don't know, like they send videos from Syria, so obviously they're able to get these kind of videos in there, right? It's not like you guys are cut off from outside media, right? Because they're able to send those videos. But maybe you guys can let me know like more in the comments of what you guys are allowed to say and stuff like that, or if anything you're allowed to see is kind of blocked. I don't know what I'm trying to say. Maybe you guys do. But anyways, guys, let me know in the comments your point of view and things that are wrong here or things that they didn't say. Please throw that out in the comments. Hope you guys have an amazing day. Syrian people are awesome, and definitely my thoughts are with you, and hopefully, you know, the conflict and all that stuff gets settled. And yeah, catch you guys in future videos. Like and subscribe. Peace. I am out of here. See ya.